It was a victim of misinformation, and we know that that's exactly what I said, and stand by it. And we knew that this policy could not recover with the misinformation that this had been put under.
One of Mark Carney's deeply, and I do mean deeply, conflicted ministers just gave a speech where I think he accidentally gave away the Liberal government's entire game plan. Mark Carney and Trump, by the way, may have quietly struck a deal. I'll give you more details on that one, and it might make Team Elbows Up a little unhappy, but they'll probably say, oh, he's the best. See, look, this is what we got him to do, even though it's the same thing that literally any other person in government would have done, because that is literally their job. I'm Jasmine Lane. This is Over Opinionated. Subscribe, follow, like, comment your thoughts down below, and share the video as well if you feel like there's some people who need to see it. And my word, if you didn't already dislike what the Liberal government of Canada has become, just you wait, because there were a number of absolutely disgusting and unhinged things that happened in the House of Commons, and we're going to fact check all of it. All that and more coming up today on Over Opinionated.
Those talks between Canada and the U.S., they have now gotten to a point that a document outlining a potential agreement has been shared back and forth by officials in Ottawa and Washington. That is according to 3 sources with direct knowledge of the information who've spoken with either me or with my colleagues at Radio Canada. Now, sources are making it extremely clear a deal is not imminent and there's more work that needs to be done, and that they're not expecting an agreement before the G7 summit next week. But we have learned a little bit about what's in this document. According to one source, it includes a commitment from Canada to participate in the Golden Dome missile defense strategy. That is a controversial proposal from U.S. President Donald Trump that could end up costing hundreds of billions of dollars and take years to develop. It also highlights Canada's recent commitment to it meeting its NATO defense spending targets, Canada's plan to make further security investments in the Arctic, and the previously announced measures to highlight border security.
Could the tariff war be over? Maybe. I highly doubt that Canadian media will stop blaming it on Trump, though. I highly doubt the Liberals will stop blaming it on Trump, though, because that kind of ruins their entire narrative. But Brian Lilly from Toronto Sun had something that I think is deeply worth considering, which we're going to play right now.
But Mark Carney's defense announcement this week, I think that is part of setting the table for Donald Trump to get a win. For Trump to be able to say, see, told you Canada was freeloading on national defense. Now they're going to pay their fair share. We can have a better deal with Canada. This is all part of the plan. As I said, a deal in principle put on the table last week. Now they're down to the final strokes is what I heard last, and hopefully they have finished that.
You know, when it comes to Liberals, I always say it's not worth arguing with them. Your best bet is probably just to sit back and listen to them. Listen to them, take notes, and pay attention to what they're doing. And Evan Solomon, you know, the man who previously worked as a broadcaster and then was fired due to some backdoor art deals of which he profited off of with guests on the show, one of those people being Mark Carney. And then Evan Solomon, so weirdly going from broadcasting, decided to start working at the Eurasia Group under Mark Carney's wife and Gerald Butts, Mark Carney's advisor. Well, he was on stage at Canada 2020, which, by the way, Diana Fox Carney has been involved in since about 2013, I would like to add. And Mark Carney has also spoken at it as well, as you can see here. So a very, very liberal elite establishment type of a group Canada 2020 is. And Evan Solomon, classic, is also speaking at this one. And what he has to say, those Liberals, I tell ya, the ego and pride runs so deep with them, and they just cave to that devil on their shoulder that pushes out their narcissistic and egotistical tendencies and tells them to keep doing it. And as soon as they get behind a mic, which you will see later on in today's episode as well, they reveal so very much.
Where the very country that built, sustained the small L liberal world post-Second World War is the very country now that is threatening that, and to dismantle it in a way that we have never imagined. And that is happening simultaneously as new technologies like AI and quantum are disrupting and reorienting the world. It's not just a shift in technology. It's a mistake to think like that. This is a paradigm shift. If you mix those two dynamics of the political disruption and the technological disruption, and then you add some catalytic ingredients like disinformation, distrust, diseases like COVID, you get the twin stars of history blinking furiously, crisis and opportunity, crisis and opportunity. And you oscillate between the despair of the crisis and the awesome power of the opportunity we've got. And we've got to strike that balance. This is exactly why the Prime Minister created this new Ministry of AI and Digital Innovation, because he recognized it's not just a technological shift.
Crisis and opportunity. That is the Liberal playbook. They create a crisis and turn it into an opportunity to scare, fearmonger, manipulate, mislead, and lie so that they get elected again. That seems to be the absolute Liberal playbook, without a doubt, in my mind. And, you know, AI, sure, there's a lot of crazy things with it. It's advancing rather quickly, but it's not a crisis literally at all. Yep, there's deep fakes, there's things like that. Most platforms have already done their due diligence and they have watermarks on content like that. They have things that automatically take it down. Donald Trump just passed a bill, signed it into law about dealing with deepfakes and things of that nature. And in Canada, under the Liberal government, they will never, ever propose a bill like that, ever. What they will do instead is propose things like Bill C-63, Bill C-2, Bill C-3, all these things that crack down on more control for your safety during this crisis. You know, I'm actually curious, because I have it right here. Mark Carney's book, Values, he has part 2, 3 crises of values. And that takes up a whopping almost 100 pages worth of just talking about all of the crisis in the world and how we need to build opportunities out of those crises. That's actually pretty well what this entire book is about the crisis, of which he claims there isn't actually any scientific or any real data to prove that there is a crisis, and then how he's going to use this as an opportunity to make a lot of money. Yeah, he sure will.
So what do you make of the fact that public servants are not being held accountable for failing to check that this work, like, you know, signing these contracts and never checking that the work's going to be done? Should there be punitive measures here?
Well, yes. I mean, anybody who did that should be fired, but the politicians should be held accountable as well. I mean, I just finished listing all of the Liberal ministers that were in charge of these various departments that went ahead and spent this money, even though it was unnecessary. I mean, look at Patty Hajdu. We said that the ArriveCAN app was unnecessary, and they went ahead and used it anyway. We didn't need it. It didn't do any good, and it cost a fortune. Why was she not held accountable instead of promoted by Mark Carney? Why was Dominic LeBlanc, who was the public safety minister, not held accountable? Why was Sean Fraser promoted after he made these mistakes? This Liberal government is in a habit of promoting politicians who waste people's money and screw up people's lives.
Yeah, they sure do, don't they? On that note, here's some of them doing just that in the House of Commons, and prepare yourself for possibly one of those feelings in your chest where it's like somebody's sitting on you because you're just like, how is this real? You're going to feel that for sure, because François-Philippe Champagne is doing something kind of weird. We're going to get into that. Just listen to him, though, when he's asked about it.
Is the Minister of Finance going to be using taxpayer dollars to travel out of the country this week?
Mr. Speaker, first of all, I'm happy to say hello to my colleague. He was my critic when I was a young man, Mr. Speaker, when I started in this House, and now I see that 10 years after, I still have the pleasure to have to answer his question. He comes from a great region. My dad lives next to his.
Agro West.
Is the Minister of Financing planning on traveling to the Bilderberg meetings this week using taxpayer dollars?
The Honourable Minister.
I'm very proud to answer questions from my colleague. Like I said, he comes from a great region where my family is also, so I've seen him in action, and it's great to see that they can.
For Niagara West.
I just want to ask the Finance Minister why he believes that he should spend time at the Bilderberg meetings rather than actually tabling the budget.
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm so glad to see my colleague is actually following, paying so much attention about what I do. I travel to Shawinigan also every weekend, Mr. Speaker, and I would be glad to invite him at home as well, because he seems to be very interested where I'm going.
So if you were wondering, the answer is absolutely yes, judging by his response. And the filibustering, oh man. You know, I was going to say I missed that, but I don't. I hate it. I hate it so much. It should be illegal. It should be absolutely banned in the House of Commons. Gross. But yes, indeed, Francois-Philippe Champagne, it appears, does have an invite to the annual invite-only, super secure Bilderberg Group's conference where they have political figures, journalists, business leaders, stuff like that. First established in 1954 and is very much known for its incredibly secretive nature and focus on international affairs and geopolitics. You know, what's interesting is even a quick Google search of the Bilderberg Group and their meetings that they have, it shows that due to the high profile nature of its attendees, the Bilderberg Group has faced criticism for its potential influence on global policy and decision making, because it seems kind of weird that all of these really high profile people would get together, invite only, super secret, to discuss issues of geopolitical nature, political, economic issues as well. And they have no official records. There's no transcripts released. Absolutely every single thing that takes place at this meeting is off the record, and your tax dollars are going to fund his attendance, which is very, very weird. Also, some notable points here: conspiracy theories. The Bilderberg Group has been associated with various conspiracy theories, which often depict it as a secret cabal manipulating global affairs. Interesting. They also have a really big issue with transparency, obviously, as I mentioned previous. And despite the secrecy of potential for conspiracy theories, the Bilderberg Group's purpose is to bring together diverse perspectives of only people who are left-leaning on international issues and to foster dialogue amongst its members. But again, it makes you wonder, you know, if this was a college club, great. What the heck is it doing with full-grown adults that are in charge of running countries? Why are they going? Who cares, honestly? Why are they going? Why is that a priority? And why are they afraid to just admit that they're going if something's totally normal? Before we get into what can only be described as self-humiliation to the highest degree, I wanted to quickly show you some more of Mark Carney's superb and very different and new cabinet.
He is certainly, one only has to look at his Twitter feed to understand that he is a big fan of the most unpopular prime minister in recent memory, Justin Trudeau, and his policies on unsecure border, lack of safety on the streets, the carbon tax, etc. So how does the member for Winnipeg West feel knowing that the Liberal Party had to walk away from his record as a former member of Parliament and from that of his mentor Justin Trudeau just to get re-elected in this Parliament?
The honourable member for Winnipeg West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To my honourable colleague, I was very supportive of many of the policies that were undertaken by that Prime Minister, by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. I'm certain he saved countless lives in Canada through the pandemic and brought us through one of the fastest economic recoveries in the G7. I make no apologies for that. But it is a new time and new challenges, and I am here to continue with these challenges.
Comments, the honourable member for Elgin, St. Thomas, London South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The member opposite had just mentioned that he was very supportive of a great many of Justin Trudeau's policies. I'm wondering if one of those was the consumer carbon tax, knowing that it was in full force when he was nominated as a Liberal candidate in October of last year.
The honourable member for Winnipeg West in 30 seconds.
The carbon tax at its time was something I supported. And it did what it was supposed to have done. It was a victim of misinformation, and we know that that's exactly what I said, and stand by it. And we knew that this policy could not recover with the misinformation that this had been put under.
I have a new challenge for Liberals. You should try it too, because I think it will be pretty fun. Instead of them just telling us something is misinformation and then walking away as though that is a victory, it's not. I I want them to really prove it to me. Yeah. Like, so if you say it's a victim of misinformation, tell me why. Give me the evidence, the data, the statistics. Tell me exactly why I'm misinformed, and I will scream it from the rooftops. I will do a full video dedicated to you proving me wrong. I would far rather that than just yelling misinformation or disinformation at me and walking away as though you've won, because you haven't. And I actually really want you to win. So please, I love the truth. I'm happy to admit the truth if I ever get something wrong. So I think that could be a fun little challenge. But here's the thing. The Parliamentary Budget Officer, which is the Liberal government's own independent watchdog, found that 8 out of 10 families actually paid more in carbon taxes than they got back in rebates when you factored in all of the costs, the inflationary costs that accrued as a result of this, your grocery bill, your utility bill, your transportation bill. They found that 8 out of 10 families did significantly worse. And so if the numbers say that you're losing money, but then the Liberals say that you're making money, who is it that's really spreading misinformation? The Bank of Canada even said that the carbon tax was a direct contributor to inflation. And let's also just think about this critically. If the carbon tax was working and it was doing what it was supposed to do and it was actually good and it was just a victim of misinformation, there is no way anybody would have scrapped it because it was doing a good thing, right? So why did they get rid of it? Why wouldn't they have doubled down on it? Why wouldn't they have just proven all of us misinformationists wrong instead of getting rid of it? That doesn't actually make any sense. So, when facts don't fit the narrative, Liberals call it misinformation, but the real misinformation, as far as I can tell, is actually the policy itself.
So that's my first priority. So basically you have to remember, Minister Joly's first priority is auto. Second priority, we need to grow the economy while we're dealing with this trade war. It's a huge undertaking, but we can do that through 3 main things within my own portfolio is a defense industrial strategy, and I'll talk to you more about that, AI, tech, and also energy. And thirdly, because I'm in charge also of research and science, we need to bring the best and the brightest in the US that are in the universities and that are affected by academic freedom. So we will get 1,000 researchers from the US and we will bring them to Canada.
Oh, you will you? You think people studying in America want to come to Canada? Where are they going to live? A tent? A modular home? You're going to bring them to Canada, are you? Well, just take a look at these immigration charts. Honey, we actually can't bring anybody to Canada right now at all. Cute soundbite, but you can't attract world-class researchers to a country where energy is expensive, red tape is endless, and political leadership is this unserious.
Well, we support a stronger border. We want severe limits on population growth to reverse the damage the Liberals did to our system. The population has been growing out of control. Our borders have been left wide open. This has caused the free flow of drugs, human trafficking, illegal migration, and much worse. And that is why we want a stronger border. We want to crack down on abuses in the immigration system. And we want to ensure that any frauds in the refugee system are reversed.
There is a truth bomb coming, but you have to listen to Melanie Joly just a little bit more before we hand deliver it to her.
There have been big investments in Canada in the last few years, especially when it comes to the EV value chain. Yeah. But there are a lot of issues with this. Of course, the combination of slower growth in EV demand and the trade challenges is really putting pressure on the sector. So what are your thoughts on Canada's approach to supporting the EV transition, and is everything still in line the way it was?
Yeah. So we took a decision some years ago to really invest in this EV supply chain. It was an industrial policy decision, a big one. And we thought we could do so for many reasons because, of course, we had access to the critical minerals and we had talent, we had green energy. So we worked with a couple of companies to make sure that they would invest in Canada. But not only did we support these investments, but these investments that we've supported are particularly important as their battery plants. Battery plants are good for the EV sector, but they're good also for other sectors of the economy. And so that is something that we're looking at, because essentially they can be applicable to many industrial sectors that need basically energy in a box, which is a battery. So I want you to think about that, because it's not only linked to EVs. Now, I know I'm obviously talking to all of you in the auto sector, and we still think that the EV sector is important.
Fun fact, only one of the $46 billion taxpayer-funded subsidies for EV plants, only one, is still in active development. Northvolt, construction halted. Stellantis delayed and scaled back. Nexstar, which was in Windsor, tons of delays. Not happening, not going forward at all. So don't you dare try to say that we have a win if you have to bribe companies with billions of dollars to show up and they still leave you at the altar. That is not a win. That is an embarrassment. And my Lord, I pray that Melanie Joly knows that she is lying when she says this, because if she doesn't, holy crap, we are in so much more trouble than I thought we were. The $46 billion of taxpayer money to bribe and subsidize the EV industry to start in Canada, those battery plants are specifically tied to the EV sector, EV production. They are not general industrial use battery plants at all, by the way. Wasting $46 billion on something that nobody asked for, nobody wants, to the point where dealers are even begging the government to remove the mandate because they are not selling, is not a success story, by the way. A mandate is proof of failure and proof of you can't let go, or you refuse to let go because you care more about your ideology, your lobbyists, and your donors than you do about your people of whom you were elected to serve. And here's the real kicker. The grid can't even handle it. In fact, Canada is way below target in doing anything at all to make this something that could be sustainable for our future. All of this is central planning disguised as climate action. A real green transition would incentivize innovation. It would let consumers choose. It would also let better technologies emerge naturally and have a safe, competitive space for that to happen. Instead, though, they are banning your vehicle. They are forcing net zero codes and building codes and all of these processes and regulations, and they are penalizing farmers and truckers and the everyday citizen who never asked for this. But hey, what else could you have expected when you got Mark Carney as Prime Minister? His typical top-down economic restructuring. He's going to transform the economy. Those things that kill industries, that limit your choice, that limit your freedom, and hands power over to other bureaucrats and technocrats, just like he is, not the citizens, because they do not care about the citizens at all. I'm Jasmine Lane. This is Over Opinionated. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, feel free to share it with somebody who maybe needs a little eye-opening moment, or maybe wants to accept my challenge. And be sure to follow, subscribe, like, and comment your thoughts down below. I will talk to you tomorrow.